Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to the spring deep dive series where from a 50,000 foot perspective, I take a look at all 138 teams, some of the key changes that were made to the roster, as well as some key players that might be coming back, on top of not only providing where I rank each team that I'm previewing at the time, but also what record I'm predicting for that particular team. And we jump into today's episode with the 124th ranked team in major college football entering the 2026 campaign coming up here in a little under 150 days. So very excited for college football to come back, that's for sure. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for the actual games to be played on the field and getting that started, I hope you take the time to go ahead and do a couple of things for me real fast because it takes a lot of work to do these videos for all 138 teams, whether it's the graphics, whether it's the recording, or whether it's the editing. It takes a lot of work. So if that's something that you want to help a brother out, definitely make sure you hit that like button as well as hit that subscribe button as well. If you do happen to be brand new, leave a comment as well in terms of what you think about Eastern Michigan or this series in general. And with that, let's go ahead and jump into it with what turns out to be our 124th ranked team in college football. And that's going to be your Eastern Michigan Eagles. And while this team isn't going to be a super talented team on paper, this was still a team last year where if they had a couple of things go their way, they could have gone to a bowl game. And quietly, Eastern Michigan has actually been a top five program from a more holistic, long term situation output because it's not that it's any easier to win in Ypsilanti, Michigan than what it was before this head coach has taken this job, but Chris Creighton has done a incredible job at Eastern Michigan. Now the record is not ideal, 61 and 83, but he has been able to get the most out of his players year in and year out. They are always a team that you can't take for granted, particularly in conference play. And even though they do lose a couple of key pieces in the transfer portal, whether it is a Everett Small who transfers to Rutgers and could be starting on Rutgers' offensive line this fall, or whether they lose an Andrew Marshall, for example, who is the one of the starting linebackers on this Eagles teams last year. He's now going to be playing at Minnesota. It's not like there isn't anything to work with. Joshua Long, definitely going to be a name in particular to keep an eye out for. He was a second team All MAC player last year. He is back with the Eagles in 2026 and should be the focal point of this offense going into this year. So overall, I do think the offense is probably going to be about the same with maybe a slight dip in defensive talent from last year. But what makes this Eagles team so compelling and so interesting? It is the man that is in charge of this football program, and that is Chris Creighton. Because let me say this about him. We talked a couple of times when previewing a couple of other MAC programs earlier in the Deep Dive series and talking about their schedules that Chuck Martin is probably the best coach in this conference. If you had to sit back and try to go into a top five list in terms of coaches that you believe in the most in the Mid American Conference, for me, Chris Creighton, I think, sits at number two, just with how consistently well he has done in terms of coaching this program up. And no matter how bad the roster is on any given year, I look at this Eastern Michigan team with this coach, and while he's still coaching there is always going to be a path for them to be successful and to be competitive in this conference. And listen, a couple of bounces go their way last year. Instead of them finishing 4-8, we're talking about them instead playing in a bowl game. So there is some room here where you could be talking about Eastern Michigan as a bowl team last season. And going specifically into the 2026 campaign, I think it is realistic to say, even if there may not be quite as much to work with, there is a decent amount of continuity here, which is positive to say. I still look at this team. I think there is a realism to believe, hey, Eastern Michigan is going to participate in a bowl game during the 2026 postseason. So let me show you what I'm talking about here as I go ahead and pull up the schedule now for the Eastern Michigan Eagles. So, starting things off in terms of the opener, they are one of the few teams in the country that do have a week 0 game, one of 8 games that we're going to see participate in week number 0. And because of that, Eastern Michigan is going to be able to have an additional bye week, which is important because for most of the teams in this conference, they're not necessarily getting a full bowl week. What happened is, hey, maybe you're getting like a day off, and then the next week you're gonna play in like a Tuesday or Wednesday midweek action game. So you're getting a bye, but in reality, you're only getting a few extra days off. So it's not a significant bye. Now that Eastern Michigan, they are playing in week 0 and they're going to be hosting Sacramento State, they're going to have an actual legitimate buy. So that's going to be less wear and tear that they're going to have to manage throughout the regular season. And that's going to be an advantage not only for Eastern Michigan, but that's going to be something that Sacramento State is going to benefit from as well. And speaking of that opening game, Sacramento State is going to open things up for the Eagles this year, led by a brand new head coach in their own right. Not only a first time head coach, but is in charge of his transition from the FCS up to the FBS ranks. And on top of that, Sacramento State is going to travel across the country to play in Ypsilanti. So while I still think it's going to be a competitive football game regardless, I do like Eastern Michigan chances of winning there. I also am a believer in possibly winning the San Jose State game as well. That's another game where San Jose is coming off of a down year, and the Spartans, they have a lot to prove themselves. And so asking the Spartans to also travel across the country and play against a more stable program right now than Eastern Michigan, that's going to be a hard sell for me in terms of San Jose making that cross country road trip and then convincing me that they're going to win against this Eagles football team, which I think is going to be a decent football team. Now, not a lot to say about the two other road games that they have in conference non-conference play. Michigan State and Wisconsin, those are Big Ten teams. I don't see them beating either. Not really much to say there. Lindenwood should be a safe win. I do think it's good enough. They're good enough to at least presume that they should beat their FCS opponent. They did improve quite a bit from the start of the year to the end of the year. You know, from a team that went from losing to Long Island to going being so competitive in the MAC, anyways. So this team made progress internally. So banking on that. You do have UMass on the road, which, if you're going to go on the road, you would probably want UMass, to be honest, at this juncture. UMass, a little bit better of a football team than last year, but they have a lot to prove themselves. I think that's a game that you could sit back and win. Akron on the road, too. I think Chris Creighton does have that coaching advantage over the Akron Zips. So, based on, I'm putting some faith in Chris Creighton and the program as a whole. I think they do pull the upset off against the Akron Zips there too, even though I do have Akron maybe as a slightly better team. And just for transparency, I do have Akron as a 2 point favorite against Eastern Michigan. But because I believe in the program and because I believe in the head coach, I am saying that they do get a nice win here. But it's going to be important if they do make it to bowl season. They're going to have to bank some wins in the first half of the season because the second half does get tougher. Western Michigan on the road. That's going to be a tough game for Eastern Michigan going up against defending MAC champs on the road. But then you also have Toledo, who brought in some. It's an interesting team for sure. They brought in Mike Jacobs, so don't know what that Toledo team is going to look like. But traditionally, one of the more higher power rated teams in the MAC. Ohio on the road. Ohio's football program, one of the best programs in this conference. Ohio and a few programs I would comfortably say is a better one than Eastern Michigan. So doing that on the road is a hard sell. They do also have an interesting scheduling quirk as well. They have Central Michigan as a neutral site game in Detroit. So that is a Central Michigan team entering year number two. And Central Michigan certainly surprised some people in the second season under Matt Drinkle. So that could be there's some tough games here is what I'm trying to say in that second half of the season. And Kent State, that's no slouch. So part of what I've done is to capture the reality of college football. There's generally more variance because that's just the nature of the game with the NIL and transfer portal. So, in terms of teams that we previewed so far, first and foremost, this is the first team that I think we talked about where I think it is realistic for Eastern Michigan to make it to a bowl game. I have Eastern Michigan at 6-6, beating Sacramento State at home to start things out, pulling upsets off against San Jose and Akron, while also beating Lindenwood, UMass, and Kent State to end the year as well. I do think all of those wins are certainly realistic, but there is a world where if everything comes together, Noah Kim, who we haven't talked about much in this video, but he's back as starting quarterback for the Eagles. If he takes a step forward and the rest of the roster actually shows that it's an improved roster from last year, I actually think there is a ceiling that 100% exists where they're 9-3, and you're talking about the Eagles possibly playing in Detroit for the conference title game, making that kind of appearance. That ceiling does exist for this Eagles team going into this year. But again, a lot of variance here where, other than the win and would win, there's no safe wins, and they can't just roll their headgear out either and just assume that they're just gonna win those games either. So that's my current read on Eastern Michigan going into the springtime. Our first bowl eligible team that we talked about in the spring deep dive series. But I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are as well about this Eastern Michigan football team going into as we are embroiled with spring ball. And then also, not only if you could leave a comment for me just for not just talking about Eastern Michigan football, but also talking in regards to just general feedback on the series, because this is the first time I'm doing this on YouTube. Definitely let me know down below. But in the meantime, I would appreciate it if you show a lot of love to the work that's been done for this series by hitting the like button as well as hitting that subscribe button as well. If you do have to be brand new to the channel. With that being said, though, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off, but hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.